Hello everybody, this is Tara Thomas, the Director of School and Community Relations with Waterloo Schools. It is always a pleasure for us to have this airtime with the KBBG listening audience to really share all the wonderful things we have going on in our schools. So many of you, your children and grandchildren, are directly benefiting from the educational opportunities the district is offering, and we only want to build and improve upon all of the programming, and looking toward high school reform is what brings our next guest to the mic. It's our superintendent, Dr. Jane Lindeman. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All this month and leading up to this month, there has been probably a multi-year, about 3-4 year effort whereby a lot of folks from all different segments of our community have been coming together to just see and identify, analyze, contrast with other districts across the country, what is working in Waterloo and with our students, and what could be improved upon. And that's where this process has really culminated now with these community meetings to share with all of you, our constituents, our customers per se, what can we do to improve our high school programming so that we aren't allowing children to be left behind or not benefiting from equal opportunity for all. And that's where Dr. Lindeman comes in and sharing all of the details through these community meetings. So I thought, let's have her share some of these via this radio program. So for those of you who might not be able to attend a meeting, you can get down to some of the detail and depth that she's presenting to understand moving forward how this would impact you as a resident, as well as the children and grandchildren that you are obviously in charge of in terms of their outside of school time. And we want to be careful about what we're doing with them when they're in our buildings to make sure that we're serving them to the best of our ability. So that's a tall order, Dr. Lindeman, but if you could just kind of give us a summary of what you've been sharing with all the folks coming out to these community meetings about our options that we're considering.
Right, thank you. We have really been focusing a lot on limitless choices and kind of deviating from a one-size-fits-all model. We, in our studies, the task force of 56 members has been together for over just about 3 years. And even the work started even before that. And we started looking at what's working and what could be improved. And one of the things that we have known for quite some time is that we have students who are not fully engaged. Some of them stay with us the whole span of their preschool to 12th grade year, but they perhaps might not be as engaged as they could be. And then we have other kids who opt not to stay with us and they drop out. And so we just knew that we needed to look at all kids and see if we could make some changes to the instruction and to the programs that we offer, the courses that we offer, to make sure that kids were really getting everything that they deserve. And in the meantime, we really wanted to set them up for success after high school. So we looked at the labor market out in the local community and the state and the nation, and looked at what was there, and we thought maybe we could tie the labor, the careers with our programming, and so that's kind of where we are right now. We've really honed in on technical education for kids.
And what Dr. Lindeman and the other committee members saw when they visited districts across the country is that engaging students often meant really offering an opportunity for some of them to pursue more of a hands-on learning environment. And that's where career and technical education and that whole technical approach sort of has come about. And what's cool is when Dr. Lindeman and these folks on these task force visits, when they talk to the students, what you found was a lot of the kids were coming from similar backgrounds to Waterloo in terms of some of the socioeconomic similarities, the diversity, very similar. So we're talking about really the same students with similar experiences, but differently in that many of them were perhaps a lot more engaged with some of the choices that were presented to them. So talk about what these programs look like.
Yeah, the programs that were offered in a technical setting were programs that allowed students to go deep. And by deep, I just mean that they had kind of a sequence of courses that started maybe with some basic information, some introductory information, and then maybe at some point during the year it just got a little bit deeper, and then the next year they could opt to take additional courses in that same area, that same career area, and go a little bit deeper, learn a little bit more, and then even as a senior, they could, these students were able to have hands-on instruction. The facility actually looked very similar to what you might see out in the business world, in the industry. And so the kids actually got to do things like what they would be doing when they get a job. So they got to try it out. And as their senior year, one of the other pieces I would mention is that a lot of the programs had an internship or an externship where they could go out and work in the community and try it out and see. They had all of the things that they had learned throughout their high school career, but then they actually got to try them out in a real setting, in the real world. And so the kids were extremely engaged. We just noticed that from the very beginning. And probably the other biggest change for us as we talked to the kids is that they really had full plans of what they were going to do. They knew exactly what they needed to do to get to the next level. And so they were able to articulate that, which was really a great thing for task force members to hear.
And the cool thing, these jobs that we're talking about, these certifications these kids are able to acquire as young as 18, will land them, if they so choose, right out of high school, jobs that are starting like twice the rate of minimum wage. So $15 an hour jobs to only build upon from there, or to use as a springboard to fund their future education so they can pursue other opportunities through college credit or other certifications, say at a Hawkeye Community College. And that's what's cool, is we've identified now so much local support from the businesses, the community colleges, and UNI and other surrounding schools to say, hey, this makes sense if we can plug in some of these opportunities for the kids before they leave high school, or before they unfortunately might choose to drop out, so that they can light that spark that can launch them into higher paying jobs that are available right here in the Cedar Valley that are often going unfilled. We've talked to these business leaders, Steve Dust with the Chamber, Tom Panaluna at CBE, and you're hearing that for every job opening, 20 folks locally are coming to apply, and maybe only one is qualified because of the soft skill set or the technical skill set required. So we would love to sort of mirror what the business community is looking for in our schools that would really benefit and be all about serving our kids better. Let's talk about why we would need to change anything. I mean, 7 out of 10 kids are graduating in Waterloo schools.
Right.
We celebrate that success, but we can't leave the 30% behind. Why?
Well, right, we have laid out a case, and some of it is statistics, but really what we're looking at is what is the impact on the individual, and then also what's the impact on the society or the community if we have students who drop out. And so first of all, to the individual, we know that when you drop out of school, you are kind of signing up for some challenges ahead, and it's just a given. So their income is going to be significantly less. I think the statistics show that it's at least $10,000 less. That's the average. It's going to be $10,000 less than what it would be at least with a minimum high school diploma. Twice as likely to live in poverty, twice as likely to be, or more likely to be unemployed. And one of the, I would call it a staggering statistic, is that they're definitely more likely to have run-ins with the incarceration system. So when we looked at the information, we found out that of the people who are in prison, there's a high correlation with a high school dropout, that 70 to 80% of them do not have a high school diploma. And then we've kind of looked at the flip side. Why should the rest of, if you're not dropping out, or if your child is not dropping out, are you off the hook? Do you not have to think about it at that point in time? And the answer is that is absolutely incorrect. We all should be concerned about it, because we have to have kids. We have to have kids getting at minimum a high school diploma and knowing what they're going to do later, because otherwise it's not good for our economy, it's not good for our society, it's not good for anything. And so there's a significant impact on the whole community if we don't have kids get a high school diploma. That's the bare minimum.
If you're just joining us, this is Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools. You're hearing the voice of Dr. Jane Lindeman in her first year as a superintendent with Waterloo, but no stranger to our system, as she's been in the school system with Waterloo now for the past decade. Now, as its leader, she is carrying forward what has been a multi-year endeavor to really pursue high school reform. That would involve changing to programming, potentially facilities, that would help more students be engaged, walk across that stage with a diploma in hand, and then effectively land in local job opportunities for future engagement that will give them a better quality of life. That's what it's all about here, is helping kids. One thing that when we're talking about the dropout rate that we also have to consider is, why would we then look toward technical education as the solution? Why is that a viable option? And what we know from Dr. Lindemann's research, what she's been sharing in these community meetings, is that times have really changed since the 60s and 70s, where, yeah, sure, not everybody was college bound. You might be able to land a job that was a decent paying job to make a family wage over time without that diploma. But what we know now is those jobs are few and far between. In fact, research that Dr. Lindemann shares indicates 60% of this labor force that's available today to be filled with our students is going to require technical skills. It's a skilled workforce to plug into the non-college bound folks. So when you look at 60%, I mean, that's a large percentage of kids that are going to have to be armed with something beyond the traditional high school diploma.
Right, we know that for every job out there on the market that requires a master's degree, there's 2 jobs that require a bachelor's degree, and then there's 7 jobs that require 1 or 2 years of specific training, skilled training. And so the labor market has changed so much that there are certainly jobs out there that require a 4-year degree, and we absolutely want to prepare kids for that too. But we also know that there are some kids who would do very well for themselves to study some specific training or to get some specific training while they're in high school, because the jobs are out there. 1 to 2 to 7 jobs out there for every 3 that required advanced training.
We've talked to a lot of the students in Waterloo, both nearing graduation and those just coming into the high school setting, and what we found is a lot of them are pretty honest about the fact that, yeah, sometimes as they get older, they're just not as interested in the maybe traditional sit and get approach.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the patience or the interest to be lectured to. So what did you see when you talked to these students that were actually building houses, using plasma cutters, training for cosmetology jobs right in the high school setting?
Right, we saw a spirit and a spark that isn't always present in students. And we have, make no mistake, this is not just about students who may drop out in the future. This is about all of our kids. We have kids who are sitting in our chairs every day, their attendance is good, they come to school, parents are supportive, but yet they are not getting everything that they could out of school because they have a particular interest that they've known for quite some time. They may like something hands-on, they might like automotives, they may have a real strong interest in healthcare, and yet they haven't had the opportunities to be able to explore that. And so for those students, we want to offer a program that would allow them to go a little bit deeper.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but stay with us. We're going to talk about facilities. How could high school reform in Waterloo change what we have, not just in terms of our programming, but how the schools are made up in terms of grades, possibly building something different for kids to go to that would involve this career technical education. A lot of options, and we need you as a community to help us guide this high school reform so that we can better serve the needs of your children and your grandchildren in the future of Waterloo. So stay with us, we'll be right back. Anything that we didn't cover that you want to be sure that I mentioned?
No, I think you got that. The only thing I could think of is the future planning, that this is not necessarily about getting kids out to work at 18. This is, the kids see that this is a means to an end, that if they would go to school, it might shorten the amount of time that they have a career that's needed in college. And so many of them do go on to college because they start to see how it all works. Okay. That would be the only thing I could think of. And the vast majority of them did go on to college, whether it was 1 or 2 or 4 years, most of them did go on because they had had experience and they knew that they could be successful.
So we're halfway done.
Stand by.
This is just talking about what.
Yeah, it's.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United, go to liveunited.org.
3, 2, 1.
Hi everybody, Tara Thomas, Waterloo Schools. Joining me is Dr. Jane Lindemann, our superintendent. We've been talking for the past 15 minutes and still another 15 to go, about high school reform. How would that shake out in the coming years for everybody in our community? It would impact us, because what we know is that our schools really reflect the success of a community in terms of what the children are able to pursue, their achievements, and hopefully the foundation that will launch them into better future opportunities for a great quality of life. High school reform is about giving more options on the table, because right now we do have so many options, and those traditional comprehensive options are going to be maintained. We're still going to have the athletics, the fine arts, the band opportunities, but by bolstering our programming, we can then catch more students and engage them earlier on. And one thing that Dr. Lindeman has been talking about is how in their research and traveling around the country to see what's working in other districts is that once these children are engaged and have that interest in a particular area, in no way does that limit their future opportunities for college-bound approaches to living. It's just enhancing that experience for them, because now they realize I could use this certification and this job opportunity to help pay for post-secondary education opportunities. So explain how you saw that in effect.
Yeah, we probably, in one of the visits, I probably interviewed upwards of 150 students, and what I expected them to say when I asked this question, what next? What are you gonna do after high school? When you graduate, what's gonna come next? And what I expected them to say was, I'm prepared to go to work because I've really had this pretty deep training and I'm ready to go. And what I got was just exactly the opposite. Almost all of them, as far as I can recall, I think there were only 2 kids who told me they were gonna go to work, but all of the rest of them said they were gonna go to college. So my follow-up question was, why? And all of them said, because I know that I can, and I've been visiting with my instructor, my teacher, and I know that I just, one more year, or if I would just go to the next level, my earning potential would really be increased. And I remembered specifically being so impressed by that answer, because I thought these are 17, 18-year-old kids who are really taking their future into their hands. They're taking some responsibility for that. They're becoming independent thinkers about what they can do to make a difference in their lives. And so, yeah, it absolutely increases their chances of going to college. And I think that that's why we've had, Hawkeye Community College has been at the table from the very beginning. They've had members on our task force for the past 3 years, and they have shown great support for this work because they know that it's not in competition, it's actually in collaboration with them.
That's wonderful. A great point is when you look toward certifications and you talk about the pathway, the career pathway that a student might get into via being able to go deeper through career and technical education in the high schools, they could follow up with additional training at a place like Hawkeye Community College. And then, of course, the opportunities that Dr. Lindeman mentioned about internships, externships, you can then plug into local employers that are really looking for qualified people, and there's a shortage of them right now. And to get those opportunities, the sooner the better, so that they don't have to look outside of the Cedar Valley to find employees. They can look in their backyard in Waterloo schools to help really fill the ranks for those kids then to use that opportunity, for many of them, to pay for a college education that maybe earlier on in their life they didn't think that would have been viable for them. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to afford that opportunity. So just so many fun opportunities that we get to talk about for your children and your grandchildren to benefit from as we move forward with Waterloo Schools programming, and hopefully changing and tweaking what we're offering to only improve it for the children coming up in the lower grades. And let's talk about how that might look with facilities. What are some of the options? Because you hear the community has been talking a lot about, well, you know, East and West, a lot of tradition, people have their loyalties. We also have to consider the duplicated programming and how that might limit some kids that are choosing one or the other school by location of where they live.
Yeah, I think the committee really did a great job of doing some of the legwork up front, trying to investigate what options were available for facilities. And one thing I think it's important for any listener to think about is that we have really done a good job of using our local option sales tax money to improve our buildings. And we have made it almost all the way through our buildings, with the exception of some a little bit more at the middle schools and at the high schools. So we definitely need to do some updating at our high schools. We've done a little bit, just a bare bones little bit, but So as we looked at that, we thought we could just renovate them to be a regular high school, or in the meantime, we might be able to take advantage of it, since we're going to be working on those right now anyway, or we need to. We might as well take a look at that and see, do we wanna just have it renovated to be exactly the same, or should we take advantage of the opportunity to do something a little bit different and find out if it's right? The committee actually has looked at a variety of options over the past years, and I'm actually gonna say maybe even 20 to 25 different options have come across our table. At least, somebody thinks of something and they share it and we kind of process it a little bit. We've actually taken some time to do some dipsticking of various ideas, just to, what are the pros, what are the cons, and we've run those by some community members, so they've been pretty involved from the very beginning as we look at the facilities.
And of those options, why might it be viable to have some of our programming combined under one roof?
Yeah, one of the options that's on the table, we are calling it Theme B, but one of the options looks at combining east and west into under one roof. And right now we're really focusing on probably the most viable location, which would be Central Middle School, which was built as a high school years ago. The advantage of that is there's definitely some cost savings to the student, or to the taxpayers, because we don't have to have two sets of equipment. This programming really does take a little bit different facility. It takes some what we call high base space, so just really tall ceilings so that some of the equipment would fit better, and a lot of the materials that they need are expensive, and we have plans to partner with businesses so that we can have some of those. I know businesses would be very willing to donate some of their equipment to us so that we could have students try that out while they're there and kind of mimic the industry setting. So if we have to have it donated, or if we have to purchase it, buying two sets of everything really, it ties up twice the money. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And so we've looked at how we could do that. Anytime we can have career and technical programming under one roof, we're looking at one set of equipment. The other piece I would say is that there is some benefit to having a little bit bigger pool to draw on, because if you have two specific sites, sometimes you might have 5 or 6 kids in one site who want that programming, and then in the other building you might have 5 or 6 or 10 kids. And whereas you wouldn't be able to offer that program at those buildings because there just aren't enough, we just can't do that. We can't be everything to everyone. But if they were under the same roof, you would probably be able to run that program, because you could take the 6 kids in one building and put them together, and you could probably run it for 12, whereas you might not run it for 5 or 6.
And one other option that's also on the table we should mention when you talk about the different choices that Dr. Lindeman referenced, more than 20 have been talked about. Nothing has been finalized, but when you narrow it down, one of the choices also would be having a career center at another location where students that would pursue that career and technical education pathway could possibly be bused for part of their day to that career center. Talk about that.
Yeah, we saw that across the nation, and actually that Des Moines is really the only district in the state of Iowa that has a pretty advanced technical programming, and that's the option that they chose because they found that would work for them. So they actually have a separate facility where they have all of their career and technical programming, and so students from all over Des Moines are bused throughout the day for a portion of their day. They arrive on scene and they take their career technical programming, and then they return to their respective building for the rest of their content. So that works pretty well. We have explored it as one of our 3 options. We do not yet have a spot picked out, but we're just exploring the theme. Is that something that the community would really buy into, having a separate spot for career technical programming?
If you're just joining us, you're hearing the voice of Dr. Jane Lindeman, the Waterloo School Superintendent, in her first year at the helm of the district, and already just in the past couple of months, she's had the opportunity to visit almost every building, if not now all of the buildings in our district, to just see firsthand up close what's going on in the classrooms. And what are you seeing out there? How do you feel about our district?
Yeah, I feel really great. We definitely have some areas that we are pinpointing for improvement, and we are working diligently at that, but I'm seeing the students are my favorite part. The kids that we have are amazing, and they always are wanting more. They're good thinkers, but I want to make sure that we're having all of the environment and the instruction that allows them to reach every bit of their potential.
We want your input and your feedback, and Dr. Lindeman is always open for that as well. Another opportunity is coming up. If you hear this prior to the airing of Monday, of next week, so is it the 17th?
Yes, 17.
Monday, November 17th at East High School on High Street. That will be the last of these 5 community meetings, sort of the first round of getting everybody clued in to some potential opportunities for high school reform. I should also mention that this evening, we are right now live on Thursday, November 13th. The STEM Festival, the second annual STEM Festival, is going to be at 5 Sullivan Brothers. Now, this is an awesome free event for families. Free parking will be across that adjacent lot there, across from 5 Sullivan Brothers, and from 4 to 7:30, you can come and do all these 80 exhibitor hands-on activities that children will absolutely love. So if you are willing to throw on a coat and brave it, it's well worth your time to come to the STEM Festival that's happening at 5 Sullivan Brothers. We were about out of time here, but while I've got Dr. Lindemann, who can share so much of her educational insight and now how she's executing that in Waterloo, what do you see, if you could sum it up in maybe 30 seconds as, or a minute, I'll give you a minute, making the case for why change and program tweaking is a good thing? We should all pursue that to some level.
Right. Well, I think the best argument is if we could do a better job of engaging our kids in learning, we would all want to do that. And that's really what we're looking at. We are doing a really good job with the majority of our students. But that's not good enough, because if we're not doing a good job for all of the students, then we have to continue to strive to do better. And so that's really what this is all about. It's reaching the kids that we're not reaching, but it's also about working with the kids that we are doing a pretty good job with and doing better, because good is not enough. We have to do a great job with all.
Absolutely, and the great thing is with Dr. Lindemann and her approach, she comes from a classroom, she comes from a principalship, she comes from that place of really understanding at the ground level that it is all about the kids, and we're only as good as the students we serve in terms of their successes and what they can build on from here. So we just encourage you, if you can't make the community meeting, we're going to share out all the links on waterlooschools.org that will give you all the background and some of the frequently asked questions and the depth to this high school reform as it moves forward in the coming months. And we just really encourage you to be engaged in the process, have your voice. We want to hear your insight and your feedback, and we will give you multiple opportunities to do that. You can always email us, you can go to our website, you can call. Obviously, we have a lot of options at the building level. If you have a child or grandchild, to reach out to the principal or even the teacher, you could start with him or her, and we would love to just have you be a part of the conversation. Dr. Lindemann giving her time today is one more example of how much she's trying to reach out and be engaged in the community. So we just encourage you, if you have a church or community group and you'd like to have the opportunity to meet her or ask her some questions in person, she'd be happy to arrange that. She has people who help schedule her in for all of the demands that are put on a school superintendent. And what is it as a mom, as a parent, what is your hope? I mean, we both have young children and we all want the same opportunities for our students. So isn't it great that you're in a position to be able to help deliver that?
Right. And I know that I can't do it by myself, but I'm absolutely committed to working with all constituents, and I'm talking teachers and paraprofessionals and the community. The greatest part about this particular initiative is it is such a community effort. This is not just about the school solving problems. If we could have solved all of the challenges for every child, we would have done it long ago, as would any district. And so this is really about banding together and making improvements for kids.
Thanks so much to Dr. Jane Lindemann, Waterloo School Superintendent. Please stay engaged in the process, not just in high school reform, but engaging in our district and our future moving forward. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for your time. So, Kathy called yesterday. Kathy Flynn.
Oh, yeah.
Neil. Is it Neil or Noel?
Noel.
Our friend, Mr. Thornton.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.